I don't think I've ever mentioned this, and I don't know why, because it's one of the, I think it is the weirdest, almost frightening. It would be frightening if it weren't so amazing and weird. The closest thing I can equate it to is deja vu, which is also which is actually a rare feeling. But as far as I know, it can only happen on acid. I call it the million years feeling. Even though that's a bit of an exaggeration, it basically what happens is, and it doesn't happen every trip. Like, this happens maybe once every, like, 1 in every 4 trips. But when it does happen, it usually happens a bunch of times in a row. And what it is, like, you'll be sitting there, or whatever you're doing, and your vision will skip. And you could swear that during that skip, that after it's done seems 1 second long, but during it, it seemed like time, like everything froze, except for you were still conscious and not frozen in a body and a world where everything was like stuck, just frozen in frame for a few hours. Usually feels like it's between, in your memory, because what you have left is this memory that you were frozen for between 30 minutes and like 2 hours. And it seems like so impossible that the memory had to have been implanted. It's like your vision, you can actually literally see your vision skip a little bit. Like you completely weren't there, or something happened to 1 second, 1 or 2 seconds of your time. And during that, when you come back from that, it's like, holy fuck. I have this memory that I was just like sitting there, sitting there frozen completely while still being able to think while I couldn't move. But it's like, it's not like a regular memory. It's because it is like a regular memory, but it's not in the sense that since it seems so ridiculous of a thing to happen that it must have been implanted. And then maybe a few seconds will go by of normal time, and then it'll happen again. And then it'll happen again and again. I've never actually counted how many times it's happened. Whenever it does happen, it's just jaw-dropping. And that's kind of the way an acid trip actually is. Like, the whole acid trip seems like it can be a really long time during it. But then when the trip is over, it seemed like it was all like the whole acid trip happened in like just a few hours. But while you're going through an acid trip, like, and I'm talking about a good one where you're actually tripping like pretty hard, where it gets you pretty good to the point where you're almost praying to God that you're not going to do it again if He can just get you through it this time, which happens to me maybe a third of the time, where I'm just clinging on to dear life. But and those are usually the times when I have the million years feeling. It's like a condensed version of an entire acid trip into a matter of seconds, that without your consent or your intentional, like, you putting the seconds, these things happening right there, it seems like it's out of your control, these events happening. Yeah, 7 or 8 times. It's the weirdest of the weird, like, thing that, as far as I know, that you can possibly feel. And I've probably only had it happen maybe like somewhere between 20 and 30 times in my life. But that is to say that I've tripped acid like between 1 and 200 times in my life. and it's usually during the peak. It's like time for you and everyone else literally just at some random moment froze. But then when it's done being frozen, when you come back out of it, your vision just skips a little bit. You'll be looking straight, and then the very next second you'll be looking in a different direction, but you won't remember at all. You'll actually be certain that you didn't remember turning your head or like seeing anything move to where you turned your head to. It'll just jolt like right to where you, like maybe a second or two's worth of time in the jolt. But after you recover from the jolt, in your memory you have this like that you were just sitting there for like a really long time, like kind of like in a nowhere space, still able to see and still able to do all that stuff, but like frozen physically and in some aspects psychologically too. It's like you're half frozen psychologically, and then when you come out of it, it's like, holy shit, that was weird. And then a few seconds will go by normally, and then it'll happen again. And then after it's all said and done, just in a matter of like 1 minute, one like whole minute or 45 seconds of actual time, it'll seem like you have these memory implants of like the equivalent to like a day, like between half a day and a day's worth of time of just like sitting there being frozen in the mind. So after the whole acid trip, because this only happens maybe a third to a quarter of the time, this doesn't happen every acid trip, but after the whole entire acid trip and I'm talking about only acid trips that include this process, that fuck if I know why it happens, seems like it was, even though it was only like between 13 and 20 hours usually, it seems like it was like a matter of days of actual time that you got out of it, which is why I believe that when you're tripping acid you age faster, because of this. Because I do believe that people age at their own speeds. You can visibly see that someone, like, for instance, one of my friends that I grew up with in high school still looks like he's really young. And another, like, of my friends started losing hair, and the hair that he does have left started going gray in his 20s. I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot more aspects here, way more things that are included into why this happens, why people age at different speeds. But I think tripping is definitely something that increases the speed at which the universal time passes you by because of processes like this. You know, it's just a theory. It's not really based on anything. These memories of the million years feeling, it's really only like the few hours feeling, but it's like it's worth exaggerating to that point, because the way it feels while it's happening really does feel like million years status, if that makes any sense emotionally. Because that does feel like a long time to just be frozen, like between a half an hour and an hour and 45 minutes at a time, in little sections of like a second, or what seems like a second. I don't know what's going on there. And really, there's only other one person that I've tripped with that knows exactly what I'm talking about. And the weirdest fucking thing is when it happens to us at the same time. And I'm always the one to See, that's another thing that I wonder is when I ask my friend if what I just went through happened to him right then, because it's always me that says it first. That's why, like, he could just be like going along with it, like, yeah, that totally just happened, and that's something I'll never know, I guess. But I still have like wanted to see a time where he says it like right after right after I come out of my second of like frozen time, right after I come out of like the first phase of like the million years of feeling. If he were to right after that be like, oh my god, did you just like feel that? That would be insane. But that's never happened. It's just been me saying it to him, and he's like, yeah, it did just happen to me. And it's just like, oh my god, that's so fucking insane. Like, but the way he's acting seems like it's like he's just going along with it, because it seems like if that really were to happen, he'd be acting a lot more like floored by it. Or maybe I'm just more of an articulate actor. And if it does really happen to him, he's just not very, like, he's just kind of like, well, yeah, whatever. But, yeah, I just wanted to explain that feeling from taking acid that I call the million years feeling. And I would definitely like to hear how many people know what I'm talking about from taking it. And know what I'm talking about when you trip acid, that the whole entire trip is condensed. Like during it seems like it's a really long time, and then after you're sober, when you're remembering it, the memory seems like just a few hours. And then during the peak, that same effect condenses itself into a matter of a few seconds, in spurts, spaced by maybe a few seconds apart from each other, over the course of like half a minute to a minute, like between like 7 and 10 times. Well, between like 5 and 10 times at a time. At a spurt, I guess would be better. 5 or 10 times total amounts of spurts before it stops happening. And I've never had it happen twice in one trip. For some reason, it always only happens one time, and it's usually towards the beginning, middle, like around between the 2 and 3 hour mark, or between the 2 and 4 hour mark.